Hi, I'm Neil, the CEO of Portainer. We're often asked, why are we at an Industry 4 event? We're a Docker and Kubernetes management tool. What relevance do we have at an Industry 4 event? Pretty simple, really. Industry 4 requires software to modernize machinery and process. These days, that software almost always comes as a Docker container. How do you deploy and manage hundreds or thousands of applications on hardware that is Docker or Kubernetes enabled from a central place in a cohesive manner with Portainer? But more importantly, when your operators are not IT specialists, when they're not IT experts, how do they use a technology like Docker and Kubernetes, which is tailored for an IT specialist persona? Portainer's UI UX is designed to radically simplify the operation of containers, and for the non-IT operator people, you can actually completely abstract away all of the complexity through the Portainer Industrial Application Portal. So if you are rolling out an Industry 4 application, if you are modernizing your factory, and you need a way to deploy the latest and greatest application stacks on your hardware at any scale, Portainer is the tool to do that for you. Completely self-hosted, free from the cloud, completely in control by you in your secure IT and OT segmented networks. Portainer's got you covered.
Please welcome to the stage, Portainer.
Yeah, hello everyone, welcome. My name is Tobias Münicke. I'm leading the Industrial IoT business unit at Portainer. With me live on stage is Matthew McLenton, product steward and field application engineer of Portainer, and Matthew Paris, one of our customers working at GE Appliances. Today we want to present, first of all, our product, the corresponding solution, and also launch a new product and inform you about it. The main and intro question is, who has actually heard about Portainer before? Yeah, so that's nice. So I will keep it short then, what we are doing with our current bread and butter business. So when you can, there we go. Yep, thank you. So we have Portainer designed for enterprise IT use cases, but also for industrial and IoT use cases, and we have many industries covered, like also smart manufacturing and automotive IoT. Customers are using our product, and we have several capabilities, right, that you can see there. For instance, you can run us fully on-premise, also in critical infrastructure. We support different technologies under the hood, like Docker, Kubernetes, and also Docker Swarm application management at scale, so across a fleet of devices. And this is really essential for larger projects. And it was designed originally in the past for IT customers, but also more and more OT customers. So for instance, in smart manufacturing, used Portainer, but you're still, as you see, you're still exposed to several technologies like Docker and Kubernetes. So you still need a bit of IT knowledge to use our product. And this, as I said, is and was our bread and butter business. But then when you go to the next slide, Matthew, we see that software containers, the corresponding adoption, increased over the past couple of months and years, also in OT. And this also leads to a new user persona that is consuming our product, which is then the OT engineer. And he or she has not the relevant IT background knowledge and shouldn't do it because they have other things to do in their day-to-day business. And this was one requirement for us, and we wanted to introduce also another product for it. And because of this adoption and software containers becoming more and more mainstream, you can also see larger projects that are being implemented Like here, just as an example, I won't go over the technical details, but you can see that more and more components of our product are used, like also the Portainer server that's providing the graphical user interface. And then customers are asking us, well, how are we managing the different instances across our different sites, and how can we manage them at scale? And this is something that we wanted to solve and that we are solving now. And when you go to the next slide, you can see that, of course, we can imagine something, we can implement something new, but it's always great to have a voice also from the customer landscape, in this case, GE Appliances, but also more customers were involved to actually also give the corresponding feedback and to also then do the co-design together. So from a customer engagement up to the corresponding co-design with the end customer, we developed this new product that we are now explaining to you, which is sitting on top of Portainer itself. And we, of course, are not stopping there, right? Also with talking to GE Appliances, we, of course, also involve them during the new product alignment sessions, etc., to always continue with integrating and getting the corresponding feedback. And with this, I hand over to Matthew McGlenton to explain what we have launched.
I got the left. Thank you. So essentially, we're taking a more narrow view on the UI, the interface, the dependencies for someone that is boots on the ground as far as deploying solutions, onboarding new devices, monitoring a deployment that exists, and giving the option for the organization that supports them to create an app library, pre-configure, pre-test, and allocate specific services and containerized solutions for certain pieces of equipment or certain site locations, and then spread that horizontally as it would be applicable to the equipment. It very much speaks the language of the industry. We followed ISA as far as the base site to work unit structure. And then on top of that, it can be customized for your organization as far as how you allocate assets and organize them. And then those structures can be used as the application deployment target. The entire idea is that we're not trying to force you into terminology lessons when you want people that are, IEs and electrical engineers on the floor, manufacturing and process control engineers, instrumentation techs, having to learn containerization on top of all the other knowledge they're required to maintain.
So if you are not aware of GE Appliances, we're a manufacturer ourselves, building things that bring good things for life. We're headquartered in Louisville, Kentucky, not too far from here, just a 2-hour flight. And we have 9 domestic manufacturing locations within the US. 5 of them are located in Louisville, where we're headquartered, along with 4 others sprinkled throughout the southern United States. So a lot of the use case for us with Portainer is we're a small team trying to manage a lot of devices deployed widely across our deployed footprint within those manufacturing facilities. And we want to be able to deploy them and manage them in a way that's consistent. So it's nothing worse than you try to deploy an app that you've deployed many times before, and there's some variable or some variation in that process. To help us get efficiencies with being able to deploy in a consistent way, which then also helps us to sustain also in a consistent way. It's nice to be able to have a workflow to be able to do that deployment. And so that's where Portainer has come in for us, is to be able to give that base foundation for us, to be able to, no matter what kind of device it is, you don't know if it's x86 or what operating systems it's running, it just exists within the Portainer ecosystem. And you have this idea of your Docker Compose file that represents an application. To be able to define what that should be in a very consistent way, so you could take that and deploy it to whatever device you have within your ecosystem. But as we, if you can go to the next slide. Yeah, so a lot of the challenges are, though, when you start to scale this out. So what does it look like if you use Portainer and you have one Portainer server? And maybe you're the only person that is managing that one Portainer server. The challenge is not really there for that use case. You know what is in that Portainer server. You know all the environments that exist within it. You know all the applications and all the Docker Compose files. You may even have a repository in GitHub where you source all your Compose files from. So you're mostly in total control of that. But what if you have a second Portainer server that you have deployed? And that could be deployed for any number of reasons. It could be you have a second site and you want to have those work in isolation where you don't have a common failure point. It could be you have two different organizations where one organization wants to have control of the one server and the other organization has control of the second server. And you have two different user groups, each with their respective permissions to access and manage and administer those different servers. But what if you have one application that is defined within your corporation? Maybe it's by a third functional group. And then both of those teams that are managing those separate Portainer servers both want to leverage that one application that was defined. Well, as you add on more and more servers, that becomes an administrative burden to have to keep each server in sync with all these various administrative overheads. Next slide. I think this is a very important point, and I think ProveIt in general is kind of built on the premise of there's a common infrastructure that exists, and that's to help the audience to be able to learn about that common infrastructure so that as you go from presentation to presentation, everyone's speaking more or less a common language, so you're not having to do so much work to compare apples to apples. But I would argue that Portainer here is proving it in a much different way. They're proving it that they listen to their customers. So whereas, have you ever been in the situation where you have a use case and you have a vendor and you present this use case to the vendor and they look at you funny? It's like, why would you ever want to do that? It's like, because this is how I'm going to solve my problem within my corporation. Well, we've never heard that before, and maybe we'll think about it. Portainer was different in that regard. So as we started talking, that's where they really put this into practice. Vendors that package available IT technology into intuitive OT workflows will win the market. So I'm waiting to be proven wrong on this, but this is a hypothesis that I believe to be true. So this is what I would like to call the four-dimensional problem. And again, if you're in the use case of one Portainer server and you're the only person managing that Portainer server, this may not make sense. But as you have multiple servers and you have multiple applications and you have multiple deployment locations for those applications, each of which may have a slightly different configuration, and as each application starts to have its own life cycle of version 1 to version 2 to version 3, it really becomes untenable to manage that in a very frictionless way, let's say. So the four-dimensional problems are traditional Portainer. You have your edge stacks, and that represents the definition of the application. You also have your configuration zip files, which represents the variance across the different locations. And you have your different applications of what they are. It starts to spider web out into something that you cannot manage. So that's where the Industrial App Portal came to be. So the idea is, what would it look like if, in the way that I like to think of my architecture, is hierarchical in nature. It's pretty simple. We're all familiar with folder file structures of this folder is within that one. So I'd like to create that hierarchy. And within that hierarchy, I'd like to put the devices that I have deployed within the infrastructure. And I would like to have an app catalog. And maybe that's an app catalog that I've proven through a test bed to say, yes, I would like to use Node-RED, and Node-RED version 3 is good as gold, and I know how to configure that Node-RED in a way that's consistent across my deployment. So let me capture that configuration and put it into an app catalog. Also, being able to view multiple Portainer servers from a single web interface. That's a challenge as well. What if you have multiple Portainer servers that you're in charge of managing? Those are all different web interfaces that you have to type in and log in and manage those individually. So what would it look like if you could manage multiple servers from a single endpoint in a very consistent way? Also, it would be very helpful to get a single dashboard screen to view what apps are having issues for me to go troubleshoot. For example, when you log in, I want to know, am I going to have a good day or am I going to have a bad day? You want that right up in front. Next slide. So this is where the app portal concept has come from. So on the left-hand side, you can see we have the edge agents. Edge agents are connected into the Portainer server. So you may be familiar with that architecture of the edge agents are connecting up and out to the server, which is nice because it punches through firewalls that you may have regarding your OT networks. Just like edge agents connect to the Portainer server, the Portainer servers initiate connection to the app portal. So it's just abstracting that up another level. And that gives you a single point to be able to manage it as an administrator of the platform. Rather than having all the four-dimensional problem of the edge stacks, the edge configs, the variants, and the version numbers, when you go to deploy an app, it's pretty simple of you're going to select where you're going to deploy it to. You're going to select the application, the variant, what version and what config, and off you go. So it makes it much more intuitive of a workflow rather than having to manually go through that process each and every time.
And this brings us to how we're going to represent this within our demo. The demo rack here you see in front of you is running a hypervisor on some NUC-sized hardware. The hypervisor is directly running 3 VMs that comprise 1 VM with just the industrial app portal running on it, and then a VM each for 2 completely independent Portainer servers. Within them, they have edge agents deployed to a variety of devices from ARM v8, ARM v7, and x86 between some battery-powered Pi Zeros, a Wago CC100, and a Intel N150 NUC that's mounted in the back. Essentially, right now, only one of the servers is associated to the industrial app portal, and we're going to walk you through the process of onboarding the second one, how we classify the hierarchy or make edits to it, and then add the devices that get pulled into the envelope from the second server into that hierarchy. And then we'll be deploying an app to it and going through some of the other options within the portal. So here is our industrial app portal. This is the main overview splash screen you'll see when you log in. This is a containerized solution that is enabled to talk to our enterprise Portainer servers. As you can see here, it's a guided setup process. Tells you exactly what the prerequisites are for initial setup. And we can go to register a server. There you can see our first server, Portainer Servo 1. And even from this point, it's going to tell us exactly what we need, which is the Portainer default IP here.
Correct. So we are currently now connecting to the product that you are all know, right? So at least 80 or 90% here in the audience.
And as a authentication, we're going to generate, I've already pre-generated one, but I can show you where that is if you've never done it before. Within a user account, you have the ability to create access tokens, and we've already created one so that it can talk to it. So we'll just throw that over there. And then here we're going to get our, what is very familiar for onboarding edge devices, for example, is a script for deploying an agent to the Portainer server to function as the intermediate between the Portainer server and the industrial app portal. So within and you'll see we already have an indication of the agent connecting successfully. In case you're not familiar with how we outline the steps out here, I can go back and now we see we have a second server. including all the devices that are nested under that server in one main grouping. So from an organizational standpoint, another prerequisite would be getting a hierarchy that matches your deployment setup. And so within our hierarchy, I have a basic example. I come from the marine and oil and gas industry, so my brain immediately goes to power plants and vessel management. And so I've just treed that out to some generic switchgear equipment and prime movers. So we can see here, I can go to the device groups, and I see my unassigned devices that just got brought on board from Portainer Servo 2, and I can drag those to the groups to be assigned. And these are the actual groupings, but I just drag and drop them into there. And then from this point, we have kind of our functional display of the allocated devices, their specific locations within the nested hierarchy. It's specific to our use case. All these fields, while we're using the ISO standards for the bracketed name, these can be named anything that matches your organization, your site, your solution, or the system you're deploying onto. Within, before, oops. No, that's all right. Okay, sorry about that. So this is very similar to our existing app template library. We pre-populated this with partners that had previously populated what is in our Edge app template, for example. It's a little more robust than that. Previously, we were using the compose syntax to provide for defaults within them based on stacks that these partners provided to us. With this, though, kind of outlining the slide that Matthew went over, we are allowing for pre-selection of choices. So based on the syntax within the file that defines these stacks, you can not only define a default, but also a drop-down selectable list of approved selections.
And it's important to mention, right? So this is our initial set.
Yes.
And for instance, Matthew Paris mentioned Node-RED as an example, but we will onboard more and more templates, right? So it's a still template or app catalog, so we are not doing license reselling or selling in general. So this can be the mechanism to then host your application or consume your application that you have bought, right? Or just use it to try, right? So we are hosting there, for instance, also from business editions, the corresponding trial licenses that you can then use to test the application, and then when you're satisfied, you can then contact the corresponding software vendor.
And so we'd also like to put feelers out that anybody that's on this list already or isn't and would like to be included and can provide us, an app template with the defaults that you would like to see in trial or for partnership for production deployment. We very much want to keep this updated. As you'll see during the deployment, the way that we manage these is in a much more linked fashion when compared to the app template, which was fire and forget and was disconnected from the template itself. These are points of management once they're deployed. So we can go ahead and...
Can you go to the admin page?
Yeah, absolutely.
Kind of highlight this catalog, because this is kind of a missing role of platform administrator. So it's kind of between the OEM that is representing the software itself, the application. So this would be like Inductive or Softing or whoever the application vendor is. And then you have the user at the other end, which is the person who's actually clicking that button to deploy the application into the production. But in the middle is this platform administrator role. And I think it's important to be able to give them, to enable them to be able to do their job at scale. So for example, as a platform administrator, what if I don't like the default catalog at all? What if I just want to curate that catalog to specifically those applications that I know will work within my environment. And they may be applications that don't even exist in the default catalog. If you just click that enable button and disable that. So you have the option to have this default, but if you want to be more restrictive, that removes all those applications. And you can add those other catalog sources to the list to enable your own homegrown, curated catalog.
And even to the point of editing it to limit the selection criteria that you know works within your environment, or eliminate ones that you know cause issues. So at that point, you have control and customization to curate something that's repeatable and you know will work when they deploy it in the field. So Matt, if you want to give our power plant hierarchy location, some Node-RED, just hit every node under that one.
Deploy your...
Yeah, hit Node-RED.
You're saying deploy Node-RED across the whole enterprise? Okay. I said, give me something to demo. Don't tell me what you're going to do, but...
So if you just do the power plant, for example?
Okay, just the power plant. So we're going to deploy Node-RED across the entire power plant. I'm curious what you got in mind with this use case. But
and so we have some base examples in here. Some are free text, some are drop-downs. This one, for example, you could set the time zone that you want the Node-RED instance to adhere to.
Is your power plant in the UK? So UTC is good?
Yeah, UTC.
Okay, all right.
Everything should be in UTC.
So you're giving me an option to do configuration exceptions. So these are the locations where it's going to get deployed to.
So from here, this is, you could fine tune at time of deployment. You could also pull things out of it. It's not just the time zone, but that's the criteria that's set. And these can be excluded from the templated deployment as far as just that setting goes.
But if I needed to change this to like Eastern Standard Time, I
Yep.
could do that too, right?
So you did 03, okay.
And this is just giving me the overview before I go ahead and click
Yep.
install, and off we go. So with a few clicks, I was able to pick the application I was interested in. In this case, it was Node-RED. I was able to pick where in the hierarchy I want to deploy that application. In case there's any little nuances about the configuration of that application for specific locations, I could specify those differences and then be able to click deploy. And this is going across, you'll notice in the list, those are 2 Portainer servers. So this command is going across. You really, at this point, don't know which Portainer servers are going to because you don't care. Right. What you care about is where it's going in the hierarchy. And so you've mimicked your hierarchy in the way you're thinking about things. Maybe not so much of how things are connected within the Portainer server architecture, but you know that you've been able to deploy it to the right spot in the hierarchy.
And it's also important to mention, and this was also one of your feature requests, right, that you just implemented and rolled out one specific version of Node-RED, which might be approved by your corporate IT or OT IT department, right, whoever is in charge of it. So you do not give the corresponding end user the opportunity to just deploy latest or whatever version they think is valid, right? So you can be very selective here.
Also from the screen, as I referenced earlier, it's a very application deployment-centric handling once deployed. So this now exists and associated to those devices. And from here, we can see the version they're running. If one failed deployment, we can go in and see the logs for it, for example. We can also see the variables that were deployed on it, if any exclusions were used. So there's your initial container logs. And the same goes for removal. You could say, oh, we're done with that, take it. And then it'll remove it from all the devices that were allocated for this specific Node-RED deployment. So this is not a driver just for Node-RED, this is that installation of Node-RED. So you could have multiples, it could be other services that are deployed to the same groupings or overlapping groupings or subsets. And to Matt's highlighting of the servers, it's pushing into the device-centric world that industrial applications lives in. Service maintenance and redundancy and abstraction isn't the goal because they care where that device is and what it's interfaced to.
And before moving to our last slide, right, it's also important to highlight you haven't seen any terminology around Docker, Kubernetes, or Docker Swarm during the demo, right? So we abstracted it away so that the end user is not confronted with this technology or technologies, so we are handling it then behind the scenes. Yeah, and what's coming next?
So we already have kind of a short roadmap planned based on the development that we've worked through. On the short list for in the coming weeks will be Kubernetes support, inclusive of edge stacks. More around central management, user management, and fine-grained access controls. And then beyond that, we're looking at management controls within the catalog and the curation systems to add some robust features there too. And we would invite you on multiple levels. Again, if you're a vendor, please feel free to reach out to myself for if interest in the app catalog or participating in that, or updating it if you already have a stack in there. You can visit our workshop, which will be a quick summary of this, and then a deep dive if you'd like to drive it, or any other Portainer feature you want to put hands on. We're kind of leaving the second half of it as open-ended as possible for what people want to see, or come by our booth and have a chat.
All right,
Awesome.
thank you.
Thank you.
Let's give a round of applause. Thank you. Excellent presentation. We'll have a QR code on the screens. If you want to throw up some questions, make sure to upvote the ones that you believe are relevant. Let me start with a fairly difficult one, right? And so our industry, as you know, there's a lot of applications that are not Dockerized by nature. So what are the limitations if someone was to bring an application as to whether or not it's going to be supported by Portainer or not?
We actually will be a part of that journey with our customers. I have the bad habit of being on calls with our customers for like 4 or 5 hours, going from early days of containerization, what it means, how it's differentiated from VMs, encouraging them on their own educational process if they're interested in being an advocate for that within their organization. We're willing to support you on that journey the entire way.
Otherwise, we also have strategic partners, right, that can then help during this containerization journey. And it's also important to actually highlight that 80% of our customers, especially in OT, are using purchased software. And you saw also during the whole week already, right, that more and more software suppliers are shipping their software at least also as a container image. So the end users are getting more and more used to it, and maybe just 10 or 20% are actually self-developing software.
I would say in 2019, I know I've started personally asking vendors, does your software come as a Docker container? And it's one of those questions because it gives you somewhat of a litmus test about whether they're thinking forward towards this is going to be the way we deliver software, because it helps both the development team for the OEM to know that their software is going to work in a consistent way when they deploy it to the plant floor. I may change that question to, is your software available as an app in the industrial app portal, just to even make it even easier for me.
And I definitely appreciate that, being from the OT side. I think more vendors should definitely be jumping on.
We do the same containerization journey with vendors also and partners. So it doesn't just have to be customers.
There is a pricing question, right? So the question is, does Industrial Portainer come with Business Edition automatically? What's the cost? And I guess, what is the cost model even for the demo that you presented as well?
That's a good question. And we are not introducing another SKU or another price point here, right? So we have our Community Edition and then also our Business Edition and Enterprise Edition. And we are just enhancing our Enterprise Edition, so there's no price increase there. It comes with the Industrial App Portal. So also our current and existing customers, like for instance GE Appliances, we won't charge additional fees.
Excellent, thank you. There's a question around, can you put Portainer in Docker or Docker in Portainer? Maybe if we put up that architecture slide, it will be a little bit clearer, because there were a few components, right? There's the actual instance and then the link to the server. Could you maybe re-explain that briefly?
So if like Portainer as a server runs as a container itself. So the initial deployment instructions is deploying it to an existing Docker container engine environment to run as a containerized service. And then on each end device or managed system, whatever it is, it could be all the way down to IoT devices or up to a server, we have a containerized agent that's running on that server doing the legwork in the field. And the industrial app portal is also a containerized deployment.
Okay. And I would say, as personally, I would encourage someone to go ahead and deploy their solution, and then you will get a clear picture, I would say, as to what that looks like.
Yep.
I think it's...
So just to reiterate, the tech stack is you got bare metal, and then you have some kind of operating system on top of that, which may be a Linux or a Windows, or a hypervisor of some sort, which then also has an operating system on top of that. But then the very next step is to put a Docker engine or Podman or Kubernetes on top of that. And once you have that, Portainer believes so much in containerization that they deliver their own software as an image for you to roll into Portainer or into Docker.
And I will say, if there's more technical, I would say, questions like that, don't hesitate to come to the booth, and obviously, I'm sure they'll be more than happy to walk you through all those details as well. Since the catalog-based deployment doesn't care about system architecture, how do you know if the destination is already resource constrained? And that's a very good question, right? Because you created different devices. Obviously, they have different configurations. How do you know where it goes, how it deploys?
So within this ecosystem, we're getting into more, it's on our existing roadmap also for some basic device telemetry to the lowest layer being container health checks, being our point of where we consider the line of maintaining your services and monitoring the infrastructure. So with the managed deployment and the monitoring of those devices that are linked to that deployment, we want to have alerting and monitoring built into that. So yeah, it will, and that includes at a basic level, we have a beta feature out right now in the main product that's alerting. And what it looks at is, CPU and memory averages over time, network connectivity, and container up or down. Yeah.
One of the things that you didn't demonstrate in this, and not because this is exactly one of the concerns that I have, is what if I have an app that's only available on x86, but I have half of my devices are ARM based? When you go through that wizard, it will actually present to you that constraint that I am not able to deploy to half of the things that you want to because they're ARM-based and the application you've selected is only x86. Similarly, it will alert you to you've exceeded the number of resources that are available on that in terms of RAM, for example, or storage, and it will present that to you as you're trying to go through the deployment.
And even if you went forward with a deployment and it was unable to deploy them, it's still going to do it to the ones that are compatible and leave the other ones in error that you could look at via the container logs. Even if they're offline and in that grouping, when they come back online, the deployment will be attempted.
And so I guess just to clarify before we move to the next question, you will monitor or provide the health checks for the services, right, or the applications, but also for
that
the
is a
devices,
coming
correct?
feature on our roadmap for the product that will, by nature of being included in the Edge feature set, will trickle down to this.
Good. Next question is, if I have an existing Ignition gateway, what does it look like to bring that into Portainer?
That's also a good question, right? So we have many, as I mentioned previously, right? We have many strategic partners, and inductive automation is one of them. And we already have a template also for Ignition and the corresponding gateway, right? So it's similar to just like Matthew deployed Node-RED. So then the user can also deploy the corresponding Ignition gateway. And yeah, we are an active partner of inductive automation and also visiting some specific events, right, Matthew?
Yeah, I'll be at the Ignition event in Australia next week. So,
and I guess correct me if I'm wrong, right? But there's the step of bringing in the Ignition gateway, right, of the right version. Then you're going to package the existing gateway, and that's going to be for the user, right, to then redeploy into the application that is running within Portainer, right?
Correct. So when it's currently a bare metal installation, right, what we are suggesting is then for sure to redeploy, right, to save the corresponding configuration before and then to redeploy using the wizard that you just saw.
Good. Does it support Windows containers?
I'm not answering that.
I don't know. I don't know.
We support Docker Desktop, WSL you can deploy to. There are going to be caveats to those for compatibility. You could run into issues. Our recommendation is Linux on bare metal and then a container engine on top of that. It will work though. We have customers that are using Docker Desktop in what they consider production. Would we recommend it for a factory floor? No.
Got it. Can you schedule application deployments and upgrades?
So scheduling, not directly, but we have maintenance windows that can be assigned to each edge environment, and the deployment updates, all those will respect those maintenance windows as allotted times for the updates and deployments to take place.
And in terms of like upgrades, if I want to, let's say, move from one version of Node-RED or Ignition to another, like what does that maybe look like?
So within the, I can probably show it. Oh, I've removed it. Within that deployed app right there, when there's a new version, you can step forward or back. So that's a new feature that we don't have in the main product as far as the way that we're managing the app deployment and making it app-centric for that specific target, is being able to go in there from the defined catalog source. You would see that there's a new image version, just like you do in the regular Portainer product, and then from that deployment, you can select the next version, and it would initialize the upgrade.
And regarding your maintenance windows, that would be treated similarly
Correct.
to you deploying just brand new.
So it would sit, like if one was not within a maintenance window, it would sit pending until it satisfied that requirement, and then it would do the deployment.
There's a reoccurring question around pricing, maybe like one final comment on that side. If someone was to reach out to you, is there maybe like a framework or at least like a thought process on what something would cost deploying with Portainer?
Sure. Right, so we are also here transparent. So as I mentioned, we have this professional edition and also the enterprise edition. The professional edition starts at $3K USD per year, and the enterprise edition is $14K USD per year.
Good. What are the most common IT security concerns you hear from customers in highly regulated verticals, and how do you address them?
You want?
So we have a lot of moving parts right now, and compliance and assurance of condition is one of our main initiatives. It actually, some portions of it are included in 2.37.5 and later. This environment's 2.37 because I fixed it at the point where we were building the demo. And then there's more to come in 2.38. So some of that is already in the works. We have customers that have those stringent requirements. Some of the recs we can meet, it depends on the industry, depends on the spec they're following. We're willing to have that conversation if there are gaps to help support the process. But I can say that very robust both controls and mitigations are on our roadmap for coming very soon.
And one plus point for these customers is definitely the fact that everything that we showed can be hosted on premise, right? So no data needs to be
yeah, the truth,
outbound, right?
The truth is that every bit of the architecture that you saw here, you can treat just like edge agents can have a CGNAT layer between them and a server, and the socket is initiated from the edge agent. No inbound firewall rules or anything. And it doesn't have to access the public internet. It just needs to reach the image registry and your Git repo if you're using them. The same can be done for the industrial app portal, can sit above the server layer. So you could have two CGNAT layers of protection and still get work done on a check-in cycle, essentially.
And if you're working within an air-gapped environment, you could have your registry set up within that air-gapped environment.
Correct.
So the process would be to get an image, to vet it out, and then to deploy it to your air-gapped registry. And then it becomes available for deployment within the air-gapped deployment.
Gotcha. Thank you. There's a few questions on the roadmap side, so let me maybe ask a slightly different one. Is there maybe a public roadmap where someone can go and see a set of features in different releases, but also how could one potentially influence some of the decisions and features on that roadmap?
So the public roadmap is currently
Me.
Matthew McLendon walking around, right? So Matthew is also the product steward. And of course, right, the highest impact on our roadmap always from our customers, right?
Yeah, so I mean, I will talk to you about this stuff until you're sick of hearing about it. So you're welcome to come grab me, and then when you're done, just walk away, and that's fine. As far as input to it, every customer can talk to their FAE, myself, or whoever their point of contact is with me, and we can have a sit down. We can go over the existing plan with timelines and expectations and feature set, and we take all our customers' input to every single feature. We have core tenets that we're trying to adhere to and move toward. So right now we are going to be more strict about what meets those core tenets that we're aiming at. But I would say that they're pretty on the nose as far as like what we're trying to achieve moving forward.
Perfect. Let's do one. I know we're a little bit over time. Let's do a hard question to close us off. This sounds very similar to Litmus Edge Manager. Can you describe some of the advantages of using Portainer as opposed to Litmus Edge?
We're a toolbox. You can use us with anything, anywhere, however you want. We are not here to tell you what you can't do. It's what you can do.
Correct. So you can deploy other software components, not just one software component, right? And also, you can use us to deploy Litmus.
Okay. Excellent. I know there's a few other like foundational, I would say, sort of server and VM and other questions. I would highly recommend, again, if you want to deploy it yourself, I think that would be maybe one of the first steps, but also talk to the team downstairs. Obviously, come to the workshop. Can you put up the slide again when the workshop is going to take place, please? And a round of applause, please. Portainer, thank you so much.
Thank you.